For decades, Caesar's Palace buzzed with nonstop energy. Now entire corridors echo with silence, even as the Strip's glossy lights keep shining. The silence behind the marble feels hollow. Vegas visitor numbers have dropped nearly 9% year over year. Hotel occupancy is falling, and Caesar's own revenues have plunged almost 10%. This is not just midweek quiet. It is a warning that the city's crown jewel is running on thinner crowds, shrinking margins, and a new kind of corporate control. What is turning this legendary casino into a bellwether for something much bigger? And what does it reveal about the future of Las Vegas itself? Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority data for September 2025 reads like a warning. Visitor volume hit just over 3,091,400, down 8.8% from the year before. That is nearly 300,000 fewer people in a single month, with the biggest losses showing up midweek. Hotel occupancy slipped to 78.7%, a drop of 5.2 percentage points year over year. Average daily room rates softened to $190.56, falling 2.9%. But the most telling number is revenue per available room, RevPAR, now at $149.97, marking a 9% decline. For every room on the Strip, the money coming in is shrinking, even when the lights stay on and the doors remain open. Strip-specific metrics reinforce the trend. Occupancy along Las Vegas Boulevard fell to 81.3%, down from 87%, a loss of 5.7 points in just 12 months. Gaming revenue on the Strip dropped to $687.8 million, compared to $727.7 million the previous September. That is a 5.5% slide in the city core business. Meanwhile, air passenger counts at Harry Reid International Airport fell 6.4% year over year, signaling fewer arrivals, fewer gamblers, and less casual foot traffic. These figures are not outliers. Through the first 10 months of 2025, Las Vegas welcomed 32.31 million visitors, down 7.6% or 2.64 million fewer people than the same period in 2024. The softness is structural, showing up across the city economic dashboard. Fewer guests fill the rooms, fewer dollars flow through casino floors, and less energy pulses through the city arteries. Each metric tells the same story. Visitor volume, occupancy, room rates, gaming revenue, and airport arrivals all point in the same direction. The numbers strip away nostalgia and speculation, leaving a clinical truth. Las Vegas is quieter, and the evidence is everywhere. Tuesday morning at Caesar's Palace, the marble lobby hums with the sound of distant vacuum cleaners, not crowds. The city's tourism authority said the September decline was driven largely by slower midweek volumes. That phrase captures a new rhythm for the Strip. Weekends still pulse, but the energy drains out by Monday night. The calendar itself has become a dividing line. Fridays and Saturdays can still pack the casino floor, fueled by concerts, sports, and the last-minute surge of weekenders. But by Tuesday afternoon, the pace slows. The slot machines blink for no one. The sportsbook echoes with the voices of staff, not bettors. Cocktail servers walk longer routes between fewer guests. It is not just a lull. It is a structural gap visible in the numbers and the lived experience of the property. This pattern is not unique to Caesars, but the effect is amplified here. The resort scale once guaranteed a baseline of activity every day of the week. Convention goers, international tourists, and spontaneous travelers filling out the slow stretches. Now, with fewer flights landing and conventions running leaner schedules, that weekday safety net has frayed. For the typical tourist, the change is subtle but unmistakable. A Tuesday visit means shorter lines, quieter corridors, and empty seats at the bar. The midweek visitor might find the pool half full and the gaming tables sparsely attended. The sensory overload that defined the old Vegas midweek, constant movement, overlapping conversations, the low roar of hundreds of people, has faded into a quieter routine. The city's own data confirms what guests and employees already feel. The Strip's occupancy rate, Once near 87%, now hovers just above 81%. But it is the distribution that matters. Weekends can still sell out, but Tuesday through Thursday the void is obvious. The result is a casino that feels hollow in stretches, even as the lights stay bright. For operators, this calendar void is not just a scheduling quirk, it is a new kind of stress that ripples through staffing, amenities, and the bottom line. Caesars Entertainment's third quarter numbers lay bare the pressure behind the marble. Net revenues for the Las Vegas segment fell 9.8% year over year, a nearly $100 million drop from the prior period. Adjusted EBITDA, the company's preferred measure of operating profit, slid even further, down 18.8%. That means the profit margin is eroding faster than revenue itself, a sign that fixed costs like rent, utilities, and payroll are swallowing a larger share of every dollar the casino brings in. Occupancy at Caesars Strip properties averaged about 92% in the third quarter, down from 97% last year. That 5 percentage point gap translates to tens of thousands of unsold room nights, rooms that once guaranteed a steady flow of guests through the casino, restaurants, and shops. The average daily rate dropped roughly 5%, a rare retreat for a property that has spent years pushing pricing power. Caesars leadership attributed these declines to lower visitation, with CEO Tom Reeg calling out July as the worst month and only modest improvement in August and September. Gaming performance followed the same downward slope. Slot handle slipped by 2%, while table game hold, the measure of how much the house keeps, fell by nearly 600 basis points. That single metric cost Caesars over $30 million in lost revenue, underscoring the impact of fewer casual gamblers and high rollers alike. Even with high occupancy, the casino floor is less animated, and the financials reflect it. The result is a property caught between shrinking revenue and unyielding expenses. Rent payments to Vici Properties, the REIT that owns Caesars Palace, remain fixed or escalate regardless of how many guests check in or how many chips are played. As the margin narrows, management faces a menu of tough decisions. Those options include reducing comps, tightening staffing, closing underused sections, and squeezing more out of premium guests. The numbers do not just show softness, they force the operator's hand, shaping every choice from the pit to the penthouse. Room rates on the Strip may look softer on paper, but for many travelers, the real cost of a Vegas stay has never felt higher. Resort fees now routinely add $40 or more per night, often outpacing the advertised rate itself. Parking, once a free perk, stacks another $18 to $25 a day onto the bill, even for hotel guests. Step into a coffee shop or order a cocktail, and the prices can leave even seasoned visitors blinking. Caesars CEO Tom Reeg has said the company adjusts hundreds of thousands of items daily, from rooms and restaurants to ATM fees and drinks. In 2025, that dynamic pricing turned away more than a few would-be guests. Value complaints about sticker shock have become a steady drumbeat on travel forums and in news reports. The New York Post and AP News both chronicled a wave of pushback against creeping costs, resort fees, parking, and food and beverage hikes that make a short getaway suddenly feel out of reach. For many, the math no longer adds up. Instead of splurging on shows, buffets, or spontaneous nights at the tables, visitors are trimming their stays, skipping the extras, or choosing not to come at all. Caesars reported 90,000 unsold room nights in the third quarter alone, the equivalent of closing 3 mega resorts all summer. That is not just a blip, it is a sign that the value shock is reshaping guest behavior. Inside Caesars Palace, the changes ripple through every corner. Fewer guests mean shorter lines at the buffet, more empty seats at the bar, and quieter casino aisles. Staff speak of silent floors and empty lobbies, not just on slow days, but as a new normal. The old Vegas bargain, a cheap room with the promise of wild nights and endless entertainment, has faded. In its place is a more calculated trip. Guests weigh every fee and every menu price and often decide to do less. The result is a property that feels hollow, not just because of the numbers, but because the value equation has shifted, leaving many on the outside looking in. Hollow ownership of Caesar's Palace no longer sits with the operator alone. The real estate beneath the marble columns belongs to Vici Properties, a real estate investment trust that was spun out of Caesar's bankruptcy in 2017. Caesars Entertainment now operates the resort as a tenant and pays fixed rent to Vici under a long-term lease. That lease began at $165 million a year for Caesar's Palace and has grown with escalators and portfolio additions, including the Octavius Tower. By 2025, the annual rent for the Vegas master lease stands at roughly $491 million, with quarterly payments of about $123 million. Those rent obligations do not flex with visitation or gaming revenue. Even as guest counts fall and slot handles shrink, the rent bill arrives on time and in full. This structure turns the building into a cash flow instrument. Every dollar from guests first covers operating expenses, then pays Vici's rent, and only after that can any surplus be used for amenities, comps, or reinvestment. When occupancy dips and revenue per available room drops, the operator's margin narrows, while the rent remains fixed or climbs with inflation. In the third quarter of 2025, Caesar's rent coverage ratio slipped to 1.81 times, down from 2.15 the year before, a sign of growing financial strain. The incentives are clear. Management must protect margins to meet these obligations. Cost-cutting, tighter staffing, and a focus on higher-yield guests become rational strategies, not just preferences. The July 2020 merger of Eldorado and Caesars amplified this logic, transforming Caesar's Palace from a hospitality flagship to a node in a much larger finance-driven portfolio. Decisions about staffing, comps, and which sections stay open are now calibrated to ensure the rent gets paid, even when the casino floor feels quiet. The gold outside is steady. Inside, every choice is shaped by the demands of the lease. Inside Caesar's Palace, the crowd is not just smaller, it is different. The casino's energy now pools in exclusive corners where velvet ropes and private entrances separate high-limit tables from the general floor. VIP salons hum quietly behind closed doors, their guests shielded from the ebb and flow of regular traffic. For most visitors, the main floor feels noticeably less dense, with fewer spontaneous gamblers and more open space between clusters of activity. This is not simply the result of fewer bookings or empty rooms. It is a deliberate tilt toward premium experiences, a strategy that diverts high-value guests away from the public eye and into private, high-margin spaces. The incentive is clear. When margins are tight and costs remain fixed, every guest must count more. Caesar's Palace has leaned into luxury branding, celebrity chef restaurants, and gated lounges, each designed to attract guests willing to spend more for exclusivity. But this approach has a side effect. The visible casino, once a sea of mingling tourists, bargain hunters, and casual players, now feels subdued. The most lucrative action happens out of sight, while the main floor loses the buzz that once defined it. For the average visitor, the promise of old Vegas, endless spectacle, open access, and a sense of belonging feels distant. Instead, the property's public spaces can appear oddly empty, even when occupancy rates are high. The casino is full, but the crowd is curated. The result is a paradox, a resort that is busy on paper, yet strangely quiet in person, as the pursuit of premium guests reshapes the very experience that made Caesar's Palace a legend. A hotel can report high occupancy and still feel hollow to anyone wandering its halls. At Caesar's Palace, the numbers show rooms are filled most nights, but the energy that once spilled from the casino into every corridor now clusters in select pockets. Guests are still checking in, but their presence does not translate into the same visible bustle. Instead of crowds drifting from blackjack tables to lounges, spending is concentrated, often behind velvet ropes or inside private dining rooms. The casino may be technically busy, yet the main floor can seem sparse, with activity focused around a handful of premium spaces. This is not just a matter of fewer bodies, it is about where and how people choose to spend their time and money. Many guests now retreat to their rooms, skip extra rounds at the bar, or reserve their splurges for special occasions. The result is a paradox. On paper, the property looks healthy, but the lived experience is quieter, less animated, and more fragmented. The classic Vegas current, thousands of guests mingling freely, has been replaced by a quieter, more selective flow. Las Vegas does not just run on luck, it runs on a steady pipeline of tourists, many arriving from far beyond Nevada. In 2025, that pipeline is showing cracks that go deeper than hotel lobbies or casino floors. Industry reports through the year point to a drop in international visitors, with Canadian travel especially soft because of economic uncertainty and shifting political winds. For a city built on global appeal, the loss of foreign guests is not just a missing line on a spreadsheet, it is a missing heartbeat midweek, when international travelers once filled the gaps left by domestic weekenders. Economic headwinds compound the risk. Reports from Travel Weekly and Investopedia describe a climate where uncertainty keeps would-be travelers at home or prompts them to choose cheaper destinations. The result is a shrinking base of guests who used to pad the city's slowest periods, book longer stays, and spend freely across restaurants, shows, and gaming floors. When these travelers vanish, the consequences ripple outward, from the cocktail server waiting on tips to the city budget that relies on gaming taxes and hospitality jobs. A quieter Caesars Palace is not just a local concern. It signals a broader vulnerability in Las Vegas tourism. The city's fortunes have always depended on a constant flow of outsiders. When that flow slows to a trickle, the warning lights shine brighter than ever. Is this a temporary hangover or the new Vegas? Industry watchers and local leaders are still debating what comes next. Today, fewer footsteps echo through the marble halls, not by accident but by design. As Vegas pivots toward premium pricing and corporate control, the energy that once defined the Strip risks becoming a memory. Caesars Palace signals a broader shift, less chaos, more margin. The question now is not when the crowds return, but what Vegas becomes when the silence starts to pay. What do you think, a temporary slump or a permanent transformation?